Hey everyone, welcome to Non-Monog Dialogues. I am Michelle, polyamorous while Asian, with my guest today.
Oh, hello, I'm Evita Sawyers. Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, no, this is exciting. Like every one of your posts, whenever you post, I'm like, yes, this is it's like this is what I need right now. This is so true. Like you're just full of insight and wisdom.
Yeah, I often get a lot of people saying to me, like, how did you know I needed to hear this right now? Or like, I'll even have people that are just like, are you in my head? Are you following me around? So I appreciate that. I think because sometimes, especially as a content creator, which I'm sure that you can understand, there's such like a pressure to like produce and to put out that you often worry, like, is this thing that I'm saying relevant, or is this just me trying to create something so that I stay relevant? Yeah. And so when people kind of like say, like, I really needed to hear that, I'm like, oh, okay. So, I'm not just, just talking head, just kind of saying stuff just to make noise, but like my message is actually like having resonance.
And I appreciate how you're able to kind of really condense like these insights into like, yeah, a very like accessible post. I have an appreciation for that kind of efficiency as well.
Yeah. It's like I'm straight to the point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so let's just dive right on in. Go into your, I guess, polyam origin story. Like when did you get started? How did it happen? How long ago? Yeah, go ahead.
I actually joke that my non-monogamy journey started with a 2 Chainz song, birthday song by 2 Chainz songs. At the time, my husband and I were married for about, I want to say, maybe like 9 years. And there's a line in the 2 Chainz song that goes, y'all been together 10 years, you deserve a menage, and so we would kind of like joke around about that. But I actually got into non-monogamy because I had some like unresolved issues with like what my sexuality was. I knew when I was a teenager that I wasn't exactly straight, but I wasn't really sure like what that was. And then I joined the military, which at the time when I was in, you couldn't be openly gay in the military. This was like during like don't ask, don't tell. And actually, when I was in the military, you could actually get separated for being gay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if that was found out that you had any kind of queerness, like you could be like, discharged. So I didn't have the space to like explore what my sexuality was. And I joined the military really young. I was like 17.
Oh, wow.
So when I and then I went to this church that was like really fundamental Christian, being gay was a sin. And then I married this man. And so now I'm in this heterosexual marriage, but I was still struggling with my sexuality. And I had moments where I was like, well, am I gay? Like, do I need to like in this relationship with this person? Cause I'm actually like attracted to women. And so at the time when we started our non-monogamous journey, we started with swinging, and my son was going through brain cancer at the time. And so life was just really like crappy. Like we were like, life is really hard right now. We need to have some fun. My husband had some shit that he needed to work out. And so I was like, let's just kind of start exploring. And my impetus for wanting to explore was I wanted to get the opportunity to like have interactions with women and like see if, that was something that I wanted. And so we started with swinging. Swinging worked very well for me. I do not need to have any kind of emotional connection to someone to like be with them. It's not something that I need, but he prefers that more than I did. And so swinging was a challenge for him in a ways that it just was not a challenge for me. So we were at a swinger party, and at the swinger party, we got introduced to the concept of polyamory because a woman came in with her husband. No, she came in with her boyfriend, actually, and then her husband came in later on. And they were all just kind of hanging out and chopping it up or whatever. And we were just like mind blown. Like, we were like, whoa, like, not a thing, which is really funny. Like, we just had never even heard of polyamory. We didn't know what it was. And I remember someone like saying at the party, like, oh, they're poly. And it appealed to my husband at that time way more than it appealed to me. I think at that time I considered myself much more sexually non-monogamous than anything else. And so I was initially resistant to it. And so we kind of had this brief stint where we were like, all right, we're going to like try to date other people. And I just had a complete fucking meltdown. Like, I was just like, And so we tabled it. And we came back to it about 6 months later because I had the experience of having sex with women, but I wanted to know what it was like to actually have a relationship with them. And the framework that we were in with swinging did not support that. So we were like, okay, now we're going to try this polyamory thing. I think we feel a little bit more secure in like our non-monogamy in general. We had been non-monogamous for a little while. And so, but it's funny, we started our polyamorous journey kind of counter to what you normally expect of seemingly heterosexual couples where the woman is bisexual, that they're like looking for, you know, a third or unicorn hunting. We were like, we have completely different tastes in women. There is like no way that we're going to find a woman that we both want. And so I was like, you go find you somebody to date. I go find me somebody to date, you know, and we'll do it that way. But we went to a swinger party, met a woman there that we both liked, interestingly enough, and this triad formed. And that was like our introduction into polyamory. And actually that triad is a relationship that I was in the documentary Polylove, the one that we're the subject of. So I don't know. Yeah. So I'm in that documentary Polylove, and that was a relationship that I was in at that time. And so, but everybody was green. So no one had done polyamory before. No, she hadn't, he hadn't, I hadn't. And to go from not doing polyamory at all to being in a triad, which I tell people all the time, like people feel like triads are like polyamory 101 when they're like polyamory, like, you know? So, right. So like going from like nothing to now we're in this like super complex polyamorous dynamic. I kind of likened it to like never even like having had a little tights like fake basketball hoop, like, you know, the ones you get for little 5-year-olds who got the little tiny basketball being dunked in like an NBA All-Star game. Like it was just like wild. And I had a lot of insecurity. I had a lot of jealousy, and just none of us knew what we were doing. Like nobody knew what we were doing. And so it was very volatile. And so that lasted for about 2 years. And after that relationship, we were just open at that point. Like, you know, so we were like, we didn't pursue, you know, non-monogamy just to have this kind of relationship. Like we pursued non-monogamy to just be open and be non-monogamous. And so once we kind of like popped the cap off, you know, that was pretty much it. And then we just kind of, you know, developed from there. And how I became to talk and speak and educate and then now coach about it is I was struggling. Like I was like, I am struggling with this. Like this is rough. I am not having a good time. I'm really, really struggling with this. And I joined a bunch of groups trying to like just get support and get knowledge and understanding and try to find out like how to do this and how to do this well and you know, find out if these feelings that I were having, if anybody else was having these feelings, how did they navigate them? And at that time in the groups, and I mean, honestly, I feel like to some degree, even now a little bit, although I do feel like that's shifting as polyamory becomes a little bit more participated in, there was just this real push to just not talk about the challenges. So it was, oh, you know, I'm great and I feel all this compersion and, you know, my partner is off for a week with their other partner and I'm just so excited for them and all this stuff like that. And so if anybody like talked about feeling jealous or, you know, feeling these desires, even if they weren't acting on those desires, feeling these desires to like want to limit what their partners do or like control, it was just like, you're horrible. Don't do this. You're bad. It's like, it was like, I remember the first post that I made in a group, I cried. Because of just how much they jumped on me. And I even remember what it was about at the time. We were in the triad and we lived in a 2-bedroom, but our kids lived in 1 bedroom and we stayed in the other one. And she would come over and spend the night with us sometimes. And the bed that we had just wasn't big enough for 3 people. Hello, poly problems. And so, what we would do when she would come and spend the night, and she would spend days like at our house. So we would rotate, and we didn't feel right like making her sleep on the couch all the time. So we would rotate. So sometimes I'd sleep on the couch, sometimes she'd sleep on the couch, sometimes she'd sleep on the couch. And so on the nights when I would sleep on the couch, I could hear them in the room, you know, having sex with each other, you know? And I wasn't a part of that, you know, that was, you know, when I wasn't there. And it was really, really difficult. You know, it was difficult to do. And I would literally sleep with headphones in and stuff because I just did not want to hear what they had going on in the room. And so I made a post about asking like if it was okay for me to like ask them if they could be mindful to kind of keep it down, you know, when they were in the room, because I could hear them. And ooh, that's your problem. You know, why you want to limit their self-expression? And it was just a lot, you know, and I was hurting, you know, I was hurting. I was struggling. I didn't want to control them or tell them they couldn't have sex or anything like that. But I was like, this is hard. Like, I'm struggling with this. This is hard. All I'm asking for is like a little consideration, you know, that this is difficult for me to deal with. And they just made it about, you know, I needed to fix myself. and that I was being controlling and all this stuff. And like, I broke down crying because I was so devastated by, the response. And while I appreciate that experience, because what it developed for me was a thick skin, so now it had developed the ability for me to stand up for my emotions as valid, even if they go counter to what like the mainstream group feels should be there,
Yeah.
I learned this kind of ability. And I think that's what lends into my work, is going, my feelings are valid. It's okay to feel them. And not only is it okay to feel them, it's okay to share them. It's okay to talk about them. It's okay to name that that's what I'm going through. And that's what's happening for me. And so I began to do that. I began to go like, I'm not having this experience of all this compersion and whatever. Like, I'm struggling with this, and I'm going to name and acknowledge my struggles. And then when I would share my struggles, I would also share, as I process through my emotions, the wisdom and the stuff that came forward from that process. I've had conversations with my partners and, the mental reframes that I developed for myself. And it just started to resonate with people. And at first it was just friends, just coming in my inbox, hey, can I talk to you about this? But then it just started to be people that I didn't know. And then I was like, like there might be something here, And then when the pandemic hit, we were in the house, because, everybody was in the house. And I kind of challenged myself, would I be able to like post a daily polyamory thought or reminder, or, something that I saw in a group, or something that I saw from my own experience, or sometimes they come from comments that I make on posts that I see in groups. And then that's when it really kind of took off. I think just the pandemic and everybody kind of be in the house and sort of consuming, online media, more so because nobody was going anywhere. And so then it just kind of exploded. So I think when I first started Polyamory Reminder, it was about a year ago. I had maybe, 1,600 followers at best. And it just, exploded exponentially to the, place that I'm at now. And then what happened is people started DMing me, which I'm sure you can relate to. You would get these DMs and people would just unload like all of this stuff. It'd be these long like paragraphs of like these really, really complicated things. And they would want me to respond. And it was a lot of labor.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of labor. Like, I think people feel like when you're in this place that you're supposed to give them their answers. But I'm like, I'm not really like trying to give people my answers. I'm trying to help people, guide people to their own, their own answers. So all I can do is like present the thought, I can provoke the thought, but you got to do your own work to go, where am I in this thing that this person is saying? And how do I need to respond to what I see when I think about it? Like, what is it that how do I need to apply this? How does this apply to, I feel struck by this thing. How does this apply to my situation? Where am I at in this thought that's been provoked? And then what are my answers about how I need to respond to it? But people want you to like spell every little thing out. And so then I was like, honestly, I deserve to get paid for this.
Yeah.
Obviously what I'm doing has value. People appreciate it. And in order for me to continue to show up to being able to be of service to people, I deserve to be kind of compensated for, these wisdoms that I gain or that I share, because they literally come from the pains and struggles of my own life and my own experience, and that has value. And in order for me to continue to be able to do this, and also to be able to give people personal attention, I'm like, if you want personal attention from me, I provide so much content that's free. If you want personal attention from me, like, you're going to have to give me a little more, in order for me to do that. Not that I like do it, for the money or anything like that, because it's not that. It is just a genuine desire to help folks, but to help folks in a way that is sustainable for me to be able to do it, because you can't save the world. Like, it's just not possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's all related, right? Because that's related to boundary setting and whatnot, and valuing our own time and our own energy. And I mean, that of course is related to non-monogamy and relationships in general, where it's like, as non-monogamous people, we feel like, yeah, we have the capacity for all these different types of relationships, but our energy is limited, our time is limited. So we do have to draw these boundaries somewhere. And going back to what you were talking about, like when you were reaching out to the like Facebook groups with your situation at the time and people responding in the way that they responded, I think people go into polyamory sometimes and they do more to defend polyamory in general as opposed to defending actual individuals who need help. Like over the years, have you found this pressure to maintain this sort of standard of polyamory or this representation of polyamory because there are so many people out there who, I don't know, think it'll fail or think it's like not the right way to go?
Yeah, I've seen it. I haven't personally felt it because I am of the opinion that I do no one any favors by pretending to like be better at a thing than I actually am, or pretending to have an experience with a thing that I'm not actually having, least of all myself. And also that I just don't take on the weight of other people's perceptions of polyamory. Like I just like that's just not a burden that I like consciously carry. I don't feel like I am a representative of polyamory. I feel like I'm a representative of myself, and I happen to be polyamorous, and that is part of my identity, but I don't feel like I have to be a representative of polyamory. Like my desire is to be a representative of a healthy human being, a functioning human being, you know, all of these things that I want to be able to say about myself. I don't feel like this pressure to sort of be a representative of polyamory. I also I find that so peculiar that people feel that when whoever monogamy's PR agent is, like they need to be fired. So like it's weird to me that like people feel that way about polyamory, and I need to project this image, or I need to uphold it. And I understand that people feel that about things that are seen as what's the word I'm looking for? Alternative or deviant, which it is. It's seen as alternative, it's seen as deviant, it's seen as like counterculture. And so I get that there's like a heightened pressure to want to like go, no, it's normal, or no, it's viable, because so many people are already denigrating it and already sort of invalidating it because it's standard to the norm. Like I get that, but I'm like so many people that are in polyamory, one of the reasons why you left monogamy is because of all these problems in it, and like the ways that it shows up that are unhealthy. And not to demonize monogamy at all, because I don't do that. You know, I don't feel like polyamory is any better than monogamy is. There are toxic, you know, ways that monogamy shows up, and there are toxic ways that polyamory shows up. It's kind of the same thing in that regard. But like it's always peculiar to me that people like want to promote this image of polyamory that is, you know, it's like I feel like I have to represent polyamory and sort of like make it okay, or make it seem like it's okay, or make it seem like it's really great. Number one, it does a disservice to our community because it doesn't paint the real picture of it. And so people come in like having this expectation that this is what it's like, and then they get brutally awakened with the reality of it. And then I think also that it doesn't like reflect the reality of human relationships. You know, human relationships are challenging sometimes, they're difficult, you know, sometimes they're toxic. Like that's just true of anything. So like I've never felt a personal pressure to like be this representative of polyamory and to represent polyamory any other way than how I was authentically experiencing it, which I think is why people resonate with my message so much, is because I'm just like honest about it. While I do understand why people do that. Like it's not like this thing where I'm just like, I don't get why y'all do that. Like I get why people do it. It's just not something that I've ever felt personally on myself, because I'm like, that's not really useful. It's not helpful.
Yeah, talking about like representation and talking about a triad being your first like polyamorous kind of go of it. What are your feelings on representation with regard to like, I feel like triads tend to be maybe the most common types of representation, either closed triads or open triads. And I know there's a lot of conversation about that, because sometimes it's seen as like, you know, it's just maybe monogamy with more steps. And from the other side, people are like, well, polyamory doesn't have to be like super radical in order for it to work. So yeah, what are your thoughts on like representation of triads and representation of structures in polyamory in general?
I think that for me, I think the reason why there's this representation of triads is because it still make it's a way that like the monogamous cultures can sort of wrap their mind around polyamory, because the couple is still doing something together. They're dating the same person, so it still has the appearance of preservation of the unit. And so I think that's why I think it's just a more palatable version of polyamory to the mainstream monogamous culture, because it's like, well, like if we're dating the same person or we're with the same person, like we're still together, you know, we still preserve. It's not anyone going off with this person or going off with that person. Everything is kind of happening together. So it makes sense to me why that is what people like gravitate towards, and why, you know, when people are initially stepping into non-monogamy, like that's just all that they can like conceptualize. This is what we're supposed to be doing, especially when you have situations where there's like mixed gender, so that's possible. So like, say if you have two completely straight people and they want to get into non-monogamy, that's just not possible. Like, you know, there's just not a possibility for that to happen. But if you have a, you know, homosexual couple, or, you know, a couple where both the people are bisexual or pansexual, or one person is bisexual or pansexual, then you have more of an opportunity for that. So so it makes sense to me. I do like, it's weird because I often balk all the time. I actually had a video once that went semi-viral where I talked about scrambled eggs. It's called Scrambled Egg Video. And it was like, I always say like every like once a year I go on like a triad rant, and then I'm like good for like a year. And it was just one of those, it was at my yearly triad rant, because especially in the Black polyamorous community specifically, it is like rampant. Like, you know, triad. And for those of us who that's not our focus, or we want different things, like that, it can often be this cacophony of just, you know, posts about triads and finding triads and the triad, and we're just like, there's so much more to this than just this like really, really, really small piece of non-monogamy. So I made this like, you know, post about, I call it scrambled eggs, and it's like going to this like gourmet restaurant, and there's this huge menu, but like all people want are scrambled eggs when they get there, you know what I mean? And you have literally like a line around the block, you know, people coming in, and everybody that's coming in, all they want is scrambled eggs, you know? And so the rest of us that are dining, you know, and like want these other things, have to deal with these like throngs of people that are coming into this restaurant wanting scrambled eggs. And not only that, but they're like, you know, because everybody's ordering scrambled eggs, like there's no eggs for like the other dishes. Like, you know what I mean? So everybody's just like kind of like, you know, clamoring for these scrambled eggs. And so it does get a little frustrating, while also like understanding that it is a viable form of non-monogamy. Like, I can't say that it's not non-monogamy. I can't say that, you know, people, grown folks can't desire to have that kind of dynamic. I think it's just the ways in which we go about trying to establish it are the problem. And I also think that we don't often look into all the things that influence why people have that desire in the first place, and that those things are very important. So is unpacking why you feel like this is the only setup that works for you, or this is the only setup that you're desiring. And even if at the end of that inquiry, your desire for it is still the same, at least you understand all the elements that influence why you want a triad for whatever reason. And I think a lot of it comes from the space of going, we're still going to feel like we're together as we're dating this other person. And I think sometimes we also look at it from the perspective of couples, but there are a lot of single people that actually come into polyamory looking for triads, a lot more than you would think. But I think in that regard, the focus is still on, like I said, because of this representation of polyamory kind of being like this, people just aren't expanding their mind to like the possibilities of what it can be. And so I think singles, you know, kind of come in and they can kind of do that same thing of going, well, this is the standard like dynamic that you want to strive for. And I think also that, like I said, that erroneous assumption that it is basic polyamory when it's actually pretty advanced. And then too, having been into triads myself personally, like honestly, like, I mean, you know, when they were going well, they felt amazing. Like they really did, you know, so I'm not gonna lie, you know, about that. But my second triad was way, way, way different than the first one. And I had a much better experience with it. But there were so many other things that like were different about it than what you normally see in the standard triad. So like I was dating a married couple, I was married, you know, so there was a lot, we were open, we weren't polyfidelous. So there was a lot of other things that you don't typically see. And it definitely gave me a totally different experience than it did when I did my first triad. So it's one of those things that I have complicated feelings about. And I do wish that the public representation of poly would be less triads, or even just more of a variety of triads. Like it's always kind of the same one, but like less triads or more of a variety of triads, while also understanding that like it's even sometimes hard to represent polyamory because it is so vast. And it looks so different. And when you're trying to have mass appeal, you tend to kind of distill things down into digestible pieces. And so I feel like people just think that triads are more digestible from a representation standpoint, but from a practical application standpoint and a lived experience standpoint, that's actually very different.
Fairly recently, what was it, Caroline Giuliani, like Rudy Giuliani's daughter, like came out with an article in Vanity Fair where she talks about being non-monogamous, but it was kind of what you expect. It was more of the same. It was this pretty like, well-to-do white woman engaging in non-monogamy, and mostly what she talked about was triads, and mostly what she talked about was like exploring her sexual freedom through threesomes, and I think so she was talking about swinging, and then she was also talking about more like romantic polyamory as well. But yeah, most of the focus on the article was how liberating it was to be able to engage in a relationship with like a couple. And I was reading this and I'm like, okay, I feel like this contributes, this is kind of productive and helpful, but it still feels like more of the same.
Yeah, that's the part that I get. Like, I literally, when I hear about it, the thing that goes to my mind is I'm like, well, somebody just get a damn imagination. Like, that's the way I feel. Like, I'm like, yeah, like, I'm just like, why would you turn away from, this very standard thing, monogamy and, and all that? Why would you turn away from that just to like turn back to like the status quo in a way? So a lot of it just feels very unimaginative to me. So I'm like, I'm like, there's so much more that you could have, and no one's even to say like you can't have a triad if you want to. If you want to have a triad, have a triad. But I'm like, is that all that you see? Is that the polyamory is so vast and so broad, and you literally can like create the most authentic relationships that will serve you best, and you will be able to show up well in and all those things like that. Love people how you want to love them and be loved how you want to love. Like, why would you go with something that's so, like I said, why would you go with scrambled eggs?
Exactly. And I think not unsurprisingly, when we did ask for questions, we did get quite a few questions that were kind of triad specific with regard to like breakups, because yeah, our main topic, wanting to talk about breakups and polyamory, and people are very curious about that and curious how it works because, right, you have multiple variables. How does it not just implode all the time? And yeah, you've been talking very openly about your like recent breakup, and so I don't know, yeah, how has how has that process been for you?
Whew, it has been rough. In some ways, polyamory has made it easier, and in some ways polyamory has made it much more difficult. So like, I'm going through a breakup, but I do have another partner. He's a wonderful man. He's actually here now. He came to visit me this weekend, so he's downstairs, and it's a great relationship. It is a soothing balm as I'm going through all of these difficult emotions of my marriage ending and all these things, and providing me support and care and affection and all of these things that you would generally lose in a breakup if you were monogamous, unless you were cheating, when you had someone else, and or you met someone else kind of right away, or you like sought to self-soothe with other people in the wake of the breakup. And so in a lot of ways, polyamory makes it easier because I'm not like sitting in the space of going like, is love possible for me again? I mean, it still does happen, or actually, I don't even want to say that it happens. It happens more like, is like marriage possible for me again? Because I still, even though my marriage is ending, I still want to get married. I still want to I like having a nesting partner. I like being married. I still want that experience. So like, I'm sitting more in those thoughts, but not like in the thoughts of like, well, is love possible for me? Because I literally have a love, so it's like, I know love is possible for me because it's right there. Where it makes it more challenging for me specifically is having my partner unchoose me in a way that he is still choosing others. And that is rough. It is super, super rough. And it's hard not to internalize that as something is wrong with me, because this person is still showing up to romantic relationships. They just don't want to show up to mine. And that is hard. So I noticed that these strides that I thought I had made, and I mean, I did make with jealousy and envy and all those things, I realize now, even as I'm talking about this is coming forward for me, what I use as a crutch to get through some of those uncomfortable feelings is going, well, I know that he's going to come home and then we're going to interact in this way. And then I'm not going to feel the jealousy anymore, but that's gone. So, and because we still live together, we still parent together, like I still have to show up to his other relationships, when he goes away, I'm watching the kids, or, he might, I don't know, he might be going on a date, or, he might bring some gift in the house that he's buying for the other person and I see it, but I don't have the ability to ask for a hug or ask for a kiss, or, have him remind me that, he's still into me in this way anymore to assuage those feelings. Now it's just jealousy with nothing to say to it. You know what I mean? And so that has made it really really, 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 really challenging, and not like slipping into that pattern of going, well, these other people must be better than me in some way. Because you kind of deal with that a little bit, and then your partner comes back and they hang out with you and you're like, oh, okay, we're the same. I mean, they regard us both. But like now I'm kind of, highlighting the differences between myself and the partners that he's retained, causing it to think, well, it's because I wasn't this and this person is that. It's because I wasn't this and this person is that. And that thought process can get pretty dark. Sometimes it can.
Mm-hmm. Right, like you're still living with your ex and still parenting and stuff. And I think people also had questions of like, if you do want to still like retain contact and have a relationship with a former partner, like how do you create a new connection or relationship, or how do you transition into something new, especially if you like still want each other in each other's lives? What are your feelings on that, or what are your thoughts on like transitioning into just something else completely?
Yeah, and see, this is actually something that I've been navigating within myself recently, because in the space that my husband and I are in now, we're largely kind of going, well, and honestly, it was him that kind of initiated that. It was like, I really don't want to have much to do with you outside of just taking care of the kids. So much of this process, because we haven't even been a year. We broke up officially like fully in September, and so much of my angst afterwards was doing that thing of trying to go, well, let's find a new place, and like kind of like this anxiety of going, I don't want to lose this person. This person has been like literally been with me my entire adult life, and like this anxiety to get to the new space, which I think ultimately like sort of pushed him away a little bit. And I think it was because I didn't really acknowledge that may be a possibility. It just might not be right now, and that's okay. And especially because we still live together, like we just have not gotten an opportunity to create space so that we can process and we can go, what parts of the relationship are things that I want to salvage, and what part are things that have to be let go of. And I think in the moments when a relationship severs, we need individual time to go over the wreckage, on our own. I think a lot of times we're still trying to come together and maintain the connection to kind of go over that wreckage and over like and try to figure out what's salvageable, and we try to do that together. But oftentimes, in the best of scenarios, it would be great when this happened. But most of the time, and most of what I see with breakups is both the people have two completely different perceptions of like what happens, what went on. And so there's a lot of this kind of like regulating and trying to get this other person to adopt your perspective, and you trying to adopt theirs of what happened. And I think that you just need space to individually go over what happened, own your individual experience of what happened, and then go over the relationship for you and decide, what do I feel is salvageable about that connection, and what are things that I do not want to salvage, or what are things that are just, debris, damage, like are just not salvageable, and then be able to come back to each other and go, these are the parts that I want to retain about the relationship and the parts that I want to let go of. And then also having that person have that same thing and go, these are the parts of the relationship that I wish to retain. These are the ones that I want to let go of. And then like seeing how matched that picture is, and if there's some alignment there. And so I think it's important to, number one, understand that those things take time, And I think that there's also this, if we're not careful, breakups are so painful. And honestly, no matter what side you're on, so I struggle sometimes with being in the space of being like, oh, woe is me because he broke up with me, So I'm just like, you know what I mean? I'm the victim here. And I have to like remind myself kind of consciously to like go like, it's a different kind of pain, but it's still a pain to do that to a person, know that you're going to hurt them, know that they're probably going to be angry with you. So no matter what vantage point you come from, breakups are painful. And I think that oftentimes when we're in the space of navigating a breakup with a person, we can dissociate, in a lot of ways. We can dissociate from the experience. But part of that dissociation is not doing that work of surveying, you know, what is happening, because that is such a painful work. You know, peace, like even the other day, because, you know, I'm trying to navigate what my life is looking like, and, you know, planning on moving back in with my mother, who lives across the country. And so there's like that thing. And I was going through some old papers, just trying to get my stuff together, like what I'm going to take with me. And so as I'm going through these old papers, I'm like, there was some like cards that we had given each other throughout the years. And, you know, oh, I remember this time when we went to this thing, and like, you know, and so, and it brings up these old feelings. So in doing that surveying of like what happened, it's painful. And I think that there's like this trap sometimes to want to, or temptation to want to dissociate and not be embodied in the experience of what is happening on both ends. And so the importance of like not doing that, because the only way through the experience is through the experience, because it always comes back. Like all you do is just you're racking up interest, you know? You still gonna have to deal with it. And the longer you dissociate, the more interest you kind of accrue as you don't deal with it. So it like feel all the things, like, you know, feel all the things. Because that really is the quickest way through it.
Yeah, no, I like that analogy of like the accruing interest thing, because right, it's so gradual, it's so subtle, you don't even notice it until right, you have this huge this huge fee and you're like, shit.
Right. And then when you finally like come back to yourself, because actually, so I have a friend of mine, she's fucking brilliant and I love her. And she's actually going through a breakup too. So we like ping back and forth with each other as we're talking about this. And she's also non-monogamous. And one of the things that she said that was like this, like it became a mantra for me, because this breakup for me is so painful. We were together for 17 years. I really, really loved him. I did not want it to end at all. Like, you know, I'm one of those, if it's real for me, I will ride that relationship till the wheels fall off. I wasn't surprised, but I was devastated. Like, you know, was not surprised, but I was devastated. And so she said this thing to me that was so resonant, is making sure that I am showing up in a way that is in alignment with who I want to be ultimately, and is not a product of my pain, the pain that I'm experiencing. And so I created this kind of analogy of that as like, you go through this situation and then your pain shows up. And your pain says, come on, girl, like, you know, we're going to run off. And so you kind of go into like this love affair, like with your pain. It's kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing. And you abandon yourself. You know, you abandon your core self. You like, you dissociate, and you and your pain, you know, you run off, and you break all the windows, and you punch holes in the wall, and you spray paint. Vita's pain was here, you know what I mean? And you just trash it, you know what I mean? But once that's over, because you can't do that forever, you know, some people do. Some people run off with their pain, they never come back, you know? Once you come back to yourself, you know, and you and your pain, you look at your pain and you go, you know what? This ain't working. It's not me. It's definitely you. Like, you know what I mean? I gotta let you go. And you and your pain break up, and then you come back to yourself. Now there's all this damage, you know, all this damage that you have to respond to because you ran off with your pain. And so like needing to be mindful that it is okay and normal for this process to be painful, but just because I am in pain does not mean that I cannot show up to this situation in ways that are in alignment with who I ultimately want to be in my core, and that will not create pain for me in the future. So keeping the pain present, you know, being present with the pain that I have now, so that I'm not creating future pain.
And that's a lot. That's a lot to juggle. I mean, in the midst of, right. I mean, and on top of it all, we're still in a pandemic. And, you know, you were talking about like, you know, we need that space to process and go through this like separately as well. But like, where can we go right now? Also, with regard to like talking back to speaking about boundaries, like when we're in, you know, a non-monogamous structure and we have, you know, our various partners and whatnot, I think some people can have concerns about like, oh, do I have the right to, I guess, take up this emotional space with this other partner regarding, you know, topics from my other relationships? How do you handle when you do have a breakup? Like, is it okay to even talk about that breakup with another partner? Would it be overstepping? Yeah, I think people wonder like what the boundaries could or should be with regard to, you know, breakups. Especially, I think people are thinking of like, if maybe those two partners weren't really I don't know, didn't have any sort of relationship with one another. So yeah, how has it been in your case?
I'm fortunate enough that my partner has been an incredibly safe space for me to share with him. I also am one of those kinds of people personally that I believe that your story is yours, you know? And so you get to decide kind of what you do with it. And also, I feel like sometimes going to our partners and kind of talking about, like, for me, I can only speak from my experience. Talking to my partner about my breakup has been immensely helpful because he's often able to offer me perspectives that I don't often take as objectively when they're coming from the actual person that I'm breaking up with. But I also think that that speaks to his health as a person, you know? So like I happen to have a partner who is a very healthy person. And so they can be a safe space for me to talk to about these things because number one, they're supportive. I know that I can have these conversations without him, you know, turning into, you know, kind of like wanting to like vanquish me, you know, to this other person. Like that thing doesn't happen. He's able to remain relatively objective. And he's also very good about maintaining his own boundaries when he may not have the ability to show up to my conversation or say, you know, I don't have the space to hear you out right now, or I get that you're feeling this way, but is there someone else that you can take, you know, these feelings to? And I also think that it is important that we have other people that we are sharing with besides our partners. So like, what are your friends like? You know, like, do you have friends that you can talk to about these things? Because while our partners may want to be able to be this just like, you know, limited, unlimited, like well of support for us in this process, that's actually not just, it's just not possible. They have their own lives. They may have their own thoughts and feelings about what you're going through with the breakup. Oftentimes it can be a struggle because say someone is breaking up with someone and you have another partner. So you're like, oh, I'm breaking up with this person. I'm really sad about this and I'm heartbroken. And the partner can kind of go, well, it can make them kind of feel a little bad about themselves because they're like, well, you know, if you were truly happy with me, like you wouldn't be as affected by this breakup. So sometimes they can be difficult for them to hold space for the depth of our sadness because it kind of triggers their own feelings of like inadequacy or, you know, like that kind of thing. And so I think it's important for our partners to say, I want to support you, and this is the breadth of support that I can offer, you know? So this is the breadth of support that I can offer. Anything outside of that, you're going to have to go to another partner, go to a friend, whatever. Like, you know, I want to support you. This is what that looks like. And so that way there's a clarity there of like what I can reasonably get from this person and what I may have to go elsewhere for. And then also it's okay to say, you know, I don't really want to be privy to that information. So I'd rather you didn't share that with me. Or, you know, I understand that you're struggling with this relationship, but I feel like this is veering into the area of really disparaging this other person in a way that I don't particularly agree with. And so I'm not saying that you don't get to say this thing. I just may not be this person that you get to say that thing to. Like, you know what I mean? If you need that, this is just something that you need to say, that's fine. But you might need to find somebody else to say that to. But I think that sometimes I struggle with people having this mentality that like we shouldn't be talking about, you know, our relationship experiences with others. Number one, because I feel like that's just not realistic. Because what goes on in one relationship, I was just talking to a friend about this, what goes on in one relationship will have an effect on how I'm able to show up in another relationship, especially if that effect is perceptible. Sometimes those effects aren't perceptible, but when that effect is perceptible, that other person has a right to kind of know why this thing is happening. You don't have to give them like all the gory details, but kind of say, hey, I'm going through this thing in this one relationship, which is affecting how I show up to my relationship with you, and like giving them the truth of what that is. Also, this like push that we have, and I was just talking about this with a friend, to like not share things that are going on in other relationships. That's where like abuse can kind of happen, you know? So if you are like, if someone is like, you know, not feeling like they can't talk about their experience, or even their partner saying, don't you talk to this other person about this thing that we're going through, oftentimes abuse hides in that. You know, really toxic behavior kind of hides in that. And so sometimes you'll say a thing to a person that you're going through with a partner, and that person will go, yo, that's really not okay. You know? And so our partners can sometimes kind of be like checks of going like, am I being treated well, you know, by this other person? And so I'm not of the opinion that we need to have these like relationship kind of vaults, you know what I mean? It's all like everything gets kind of locked in this vault. And I don't share my experience with my other partners because I think the sharing of the experience lends important information with what being in a relationship is going to be with life in the context of what you got going on in your other relationship. I just think that people struggle with the nuance of what should be shared and what should not be shared, and which is just humans in general, of just that inability to find balance. So people are either sharing too little or they're sharing too much. And we're not really good about kind of striking it down the middle of like what is necessary and helpful and vital to be sharing and what are things that are kind of superfluous.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I've struggled with this too, where it's like, oh, what's something that, shouldn't be shared because it was like a really private thing between myself and another partner, but like what is a thing that is more okay to be shared because like you were saying, like it's not realistic for someone to just keep everything bottled inside and not talk to anyone. So have you ever been in like a relationship or a situation where, you're in a relationship with people and those people do have like a connection with one another if they develop a friendship or something like that? Because of course, I think this is what a lot of people wonder how it like when it gets tricky in non-monogamy is that like if you do have a breakup, what happens to the greater structure, like do people still stay friends or do they have to pick sides? Yeah, what's your experience been in this?
So my husband and I broke up with, he had two partners when we broke up. One he's been with for a really long time, and she and I have a relationship. One I don't have a relationship with at all by choice. That has been a struggle because I still want to maintain my connection to the one I have a relationship with, but it's still kind of fraught with pain because, like I said, he's still choosing this person in a way that he's not choosing me. And then I have another metamor who neither she and I are with the partner that connected us, and we're still very good friends, And so I have like a bunch of like different experiences with that. I think it is important to identify what it is you want to salvage and then make those things clear. So it's the same thing with your metamor relationships of like going like, hey, I know that I no longer am with this person, but my relationship with you still matters to me. And I'd like for us to figure out how to maintain that while also understanding that that time may not be now, or you may not be able to maintain it to the degree that you could. And then for both of you, like they may struggle in the space of like wanting to support this partner that's broken up with you while also wanting to show up for you. And so I think it's important to allow everyone like their genuine, like emotional kind of state around that, make your intentions clear, and then allow time to sort of like sort out the details of like what that is going to look like. And so I told, my husband's partner, I was like, I know that we're broken up and things are really weird right now. And we're like kind of navigating, what continuing our relationship is going to look like. But I do want you to know that I do want to maintain a relationship with you. Like I'm not holding this against you. I'm not over here feeling like you're the reason why this happened. Like I'm not holding any animosity towards you. It is a little difficult, for me to think about interacting with you, but that is not because I've now changed how I feel about you as a person. It's just, this is a really, really sticky situation and it's uncomfortable. And that's actually what you may be feeling from me, is just the discomfort and the awkwardness of the situation. But this isn't a change in my opinion of who you are. And then also maintaining your own like self-care and doing things that you need to do in order to do that. Like for instance, my metamor, I blocked her on social media and I let her know, like I was like, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing. It's not because I'm angry with you in any way. This is me kind of taking care of my mental and emotional health. I don't want to be privy to you maybe sharing some of your emotional experience with my partner that I just ended with, because it causes too much turmoil and angst for me. And so just for my own sense of well-being and safety, I'm going to block you on social media, but we still have each other's phone number. We can still Marco Polo each other. We do have ways that we can still stay connected. And, fortunately, she was very, very, receptive. She was like, I totally understand, good for you for taking care of yourself. And so learning to be okay with like taking the space that you may need, or you may even need to say to the person, I need space from you right now. May not be forever, But right now, I just need a little space because I need to go heal and I need to grieve and I need to process. And I don't know that I can do that very healthy, being, super connected to you in the ways that we were and not really judging yourself for that. And hopefully, if you have a, metamor that's empathetic, they will also understand that space as well. Because ultimately, what they should want is for you to be well, not, you being able to kind of maintain your connection with them, or at least at that time. You know what I mean? And not saying that it'll never happen, but just right now, like there should be an understanding that it's like, this would be hard for anybody.
So what kind of things specifically have you been finding yourself doing intentionally with regard to like self-care and, like your own wellness and stuff? What kind of like activities or whatever have you been finding yourself gravitating toward to like help in your healing process?
I started a gratitude journal of just like writing down every day things that I was grateful for. I have been working on allowing myself to cry because I sat in the anger of the space a lot because that's just, me in general. Like, anger is something I struggle with. I've gone to anger management. Like that is, something that I know about myself. And I sat in the anger of it a lot. It feels like a more powerful emotion, whereas like sadness to me feels weak, and so I use cannabis for journey work. I live in California, it's legal, here, so you can do that. This is not me encouraging people to use illegal substances, but for me it's legal, and so I use cannabis for like intentional, like actual journey work. It is a plant medicine for me, and so I've been sitting in some cannabis ceremonies, and I remember the first one that I sat in, I like bawled crying. And it like literally, I say like the medicine said to me, okay, Vita, we're gonna cry about this. It was like, and go. Like, and I just wept and wept and wept because I wouldn't let myself sit in the sadness of it because I looked into that pit and I was like, ooh, that well is deep. I was like, I'm not doing it, I remember when I did the second ceremony, like, I was like, oh, okay, well, I cried in the first one, so I'm good, like, I was like, oh, I cried all tears, and it was like, oh, no, hunty, like, you still have there are still yet tears that you will cry about this, and so allowing myself my tears has been part of self-care, and, kind of this acknowledgement that this is going to be sad, this is going to be painful. I've done some journaling around what I'm grateful for in the relationship, like what are things that I can attribute to my life now that I appreciate that were a direct result of me being in that relationship. Because I found myself doing this thing where because it had ended, it was almost like I had to mentally turn it into this black, ugly, like now that 16, 17 years that we were together, it was nothing but just blackness and grossness and horror in order to like make sense with the fact that it was over. But like I had a moment of kind of clarity where I was like, but that's not really accurate. Like, that's not really accurate, And so needing to connect to the ways in which that experience and being with this person gave to my life. And then also sitting in the moments where I was glad that it was over. Like I've had a couple of like moments where I was like, and I think I even journaled about this, where I was like, okay, what are the ways in which you're grateful that it's over? What are the things that you can see that you're feeling optimism about because of this thing kind of happening? So, not being in a relationship with a person who I felt wasn't, fulfilling, for me, not being in a relationship with a person who I felt didn't fully see me, not being in a relationship, and not saying that, for lack of trying on the other end of the other person's, part, but just kind of connecting to the ways in which I recognize that this actually was necessary, like making sure that I'm intentional about looking for those things. And then also not sitting in the victim villain dichotomy, because like in the beginning, you're kind of going back and forth with this, like, they're the bad guy, I'm the bad guy. They're the bad guy, I'm the bad guy. Like, and you're like doing this thing, it's like, they never loved me, right? And it was like, I could have done so much better. So like, you're like, it's this weird like dance where you're just like, they were terrible, and I was terrible, instead of going, nobody was terrible. Like, we were just doing the best that we could. And I mean, at least in my situation, I can say that because my husband was not abusive to me in any way. So like, if you had a partner that was abusive, that treated you poorly, like really, really, really treated you badly, it's okay to villainize that. But, so I don't want to be dismissive and say, well, everybody just tried their best. Like if somebody was like abusive to you, that ain't no evidence of somebody trying their best. That's an evidence of somebody treating you poorly. Like, and you get to own that. But, in my circumstance or my situation, I can reasonably say that we both tried our best. We did the best that we could. And just it got to a point to where that wasn't enough anymore. And like needing to not play the blame game and look for the bad guy, but more look for, not looking for the bad guy, but more looking for the things that I don't want to engage in anymore. So not the bad guy, but the bad stuff,
Yeah.
So like this person is a bad guy. I'm not a bad guy, but this stuff was some bad stuff that I don't want to do anymore. Like I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to accept anymore. Like, so, it doesn't make this person bad because, they may have brought this bad stuff. And it doesn't make me bad that I may have brought this bad stuff, but the stuff is still bad. And I do still need to kind of take an assessment of what those things are so that I'm not replicating it in the relationships that I have moving forward. So journaling has been super helpful. Meditation has been super helpful. Also, a very, very, very important piece of self-care that I've been really leaning into is letting people help me. Letting people help me. People like just my anniversary just passed. It was the first anniversary that we were having after the separation. It was like 17 years, and he and I didn't really know what we wanted to do. And he was like, "Oh, maybe we could spend time together as a family with the kids," but I wanted to be by myself. I didn't want to be around them. I didn't. But we live in the same house together, whatever. And a friend of mine had a couple weeks before that said, "Hey, I'd love to pay for you to stay at a hotel for a couple of days to get some space." And initially I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't take it. And then I thought about it and I was like, I'm gonna take it. And so I reached out to her and I was like, "Hey, if the offer still stands, I'm willing to take it." And she was just like, "Yep," and got me the hotel. So like, that's also been a very, very important piece of self-care that I've been really, really leaning into, is allowing people to help me. This process is rough. It is tough. Sometimes I ain't got it. And if someone's saying, "Hey, Vita, I want to offer you a bit of support," take it. Take it, and not be so prideful to feel like I have to do all of this on my own. Like, unraveling a 17-year marriage with kids, and it's a huge undertaking. And it's okay to need support, and you are going to need support. And so take the support when it's offered.
I like that you brought up like the crying thing, because like I have like a lot to work through with regard to like viewing crying as weakness. And like you said, like anger is the more powerful feeling emotion, but sometimes our body just needs to release it all in crying, just let it all out. But thank you so much for sharing all of this. And thank you for your insight and all that. I know a lot of people will definitely find this very helpful, very insightful. So I want to thank you for your time and your energy. Where can people find you? Are you working on any projects? Like, what are you doing?
Obviously, I'm Evita Loca 34 on Instagram. I'm also Evita Loca Sawyers on Facebook. I have a few things coming up. I'll be developing a couple of workshops for Pinky Promise. I am also doing a bathtub like chronicles with like Dino and Vulva. So it's going to be a Zoom event where we're all like in the tub and we'll actually be discussing like how to keep your long distance relationships spicy, which is something that people are very, very interested in now, especially with COVID and like having a limited ability to be able to travel. I am also going to be doing a workshop soon with Empowered Pleasure. I believe that is in April. And they're going to be actually taking some of my polyamory reminders, some of their most favorite ones, and like asking me to expound on them, which I love that because, I only have a brief frame to be able to really talk about them, but they often come from spaces in my life and there's always stories connected to them. And so I do love getting the opportunity to talk about those things. But so I have a lot of things coming up in the works. I am also wanting to turn my polyamory reminders into a book. 165 day, January 1st, January 2nd. I find that books like Polysecure and The Ethical Slut, and they're great. And I love reading. So I'm finishing up Polysecure, which is amazing. Right now, and I'll be doing a review on that soon. But if you're somebody that doesn't really like to read, it can often feel like there's not information out there for you. And so I like that this will be a book that has little snippets of information that people can read. They're short, digestible topics. And also it's not something that you feel the pressure to read through the whole book. So if you read something on January 12th, and you didn't pick it up again until February like 13th, it doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? It'll still be like this little kind of bite size. I feel like it takes kind of a lot of pressure. Oh, I have a couple of books that are like that where it's just like a daily wisdom.
Wow, that's awesome. I really love that idea. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
like we were talking about earlier, like I love the efficiency of your posts and like you said, where it's like not everyone wants to read like almost a textbook type thing in order to get some wisdom. So yeah, I love that. We'll be keeping an eye out for that.
I was really looking forward to this. So I know we see each other online, but we've like never really talked, you know? So I was really, really excited about this and really, really excited about it because two communities that aren't super vocal, as much as like the Black community is not as vocal about polyamory, two communities that aren't super vocal are the Asian community and the Latin community.
Mhm.
And so I love seeing polyamorous voices that are Asian because I'm like, like, you know, like, so I was really excited when I came across your platform because I've had people come to me that are either Asian or Latin, and they're like, hey, like, you know, where are we at? And I'm like, I don't even know. And so I appreciate your voice for that reason, because representation deeply, deeply matters to me. And I like painting a broader picture of like what this looks like for us, as both of the collective, but also as individuals in our individual experiences.
Oh, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, like you said, imagination, there is a lot more out there and like polyamory isn't just like a few key things. It's so many different things. Really glad that you came on here and, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You do the same.